In an era of, endless notifications and just baseline panic, I feel like we are all kind of looking for a quick fix.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, like an app, a breathing exercise, maybe a magic pill. But what if the only way to become truly unshakable wasn't a new habit, but actually fundamentally rewiring what you think you actually are?
That is a massive question.
It is. And today we are taking a deep dive into a piece of source material that demands exactly that kind of radical shift. We've got a translated excerpt from a spiritual text, and it's dated July 2026.
Yeah.
It's known as a Murli. Specifically, it's a message from an entity referred to as Baptada, originating in Madhuban.
And, I think it's important to point out right away that this isn't some dusty historical artifact. For its practitioners, it serves as a daily living lesson.
Right.
It's steeped in these ancient Indian spiritual frameworks, but the worldview it presents is delivered with a really startling, almost jarring modern urgency.
Yeah, that really stood out to me.
I mean, it doesn't just offer philosophical musings, It presents a highly structured operational manual for the human mind.
And that urgency is precisely what makes it so fascinating to read. So our mission for this deep dive is to bridge this spiritual blueprint directly to your modern life. We are going to explore how this worldview defines true inner strength, and we'll examine the non-negotiable morning routine it outlines to strip away mental rust.
Which is quite intense.
Very intense.
Yeah.
We'll also dig into the psychological mechanics of achieving instant inner peace. And finally, look at how it charges its readers with spreading a pretty profound message to the rest of the world.
It is an incredibly ambitious text. Baptada's core argument kind of weaves the micro level of your daily mental hygiene together with the macro level of these cosmic, world-altering timelines, and does it all in one breath.
So where does it start? Because we want to build this unshakable inner strength. We first have to, agree on what part of us is actually being strengthened. And the text demands a complete paradigm shift right out of the gate.
It really does. The foundational instruction here is a complete move away from seeing yourself as a physical body.
Okay.
Instead, it requires you to realize and constantly operate from the perspective that you are intrinsically a soul.
A soul.
Right. It's a state of being completely soul conscious. And the text is just unwavering on this point. It states that the Supreme Father does not speak to physical bodies at all.
Wow.
Yeah, the communication is strictly soul to soul.
When I first read this body versus soul mandate, I was really trying to map it onto something I experienced today. And I kept coming back to the feeling of playing a really intense, high-stakes video game.
Oh, I like that.
Or maybe, getting trapped in a toxic multi-thread argument on some social media platform. You are operating through an avatar.
Yes, exactly.
And when you are in it, your physical heart rate is up, you're sweating, your jaw is clenched, you are furious.
Yeah.
But then you take the VR headset off or you just log out.
Right.
And suddenly you remember, wait, I'm just a person sitting on a quiet couch. The avatar's stress isn't actually mine.
That is a highly effective way to visualize it. When you are body conscious, as the text describes it, you are completely desperately identified with the avatar.
Right.
Every slight, every physical ache, every drop in social status feels like absolute life or death because you believe you literally are the avatar.
But I have to admit, I do struggle with this a bit.
How so?
Well, because if my physical avatar gets fired from its job, or if my physical avatar's car breaks down, I can't just log out and pay rent with spiritual peace.
Sure, yeah.
So does this worldview account for real-world stakes? Isn't this just a form of, spiritual dissociation?
That is probably the most common critique of this kind of framework. But what's radical about this approach is that it isn't advocating for apathy or dissociation at all.
Okay.
It's advocating for superior perspective. By zooming out to a soul-level perspective, you don't ignore the broken-down car. You simply remove the existential panic from the equation.
I see.
The text says that possessing this knowledge makes you knowledgeable like the Father. You aren't just looking at the crisis of the present moment. You are seeing the entire cycle of time.
Right. It talks about this massive timeline, right? From a pure golden age all the way down to a degraded iron age.
Exactly. It describes the current period as a transitional era, the confluence age.
The confluence age.
Right. It's the hinge point where humanity shifts from a degraded world back to a divine one. So when you have that unparalleled contextual awareness, you don't panic when the avatar faces a setback.
Because it's just a small part of the picture.
Yes. You know it's a fleeting part of a massive cyclical drama, You still solve the problem with the car or the job, but you do it from a place of unshakable stability rather than frantic desperation.
It's interesting because you don't just see this degradation on a cosmic timeline. You see it in your own day.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, you wake up feeling pure and golden, rested and optimistic. But by 5 p.m., after 200 emails, an hour in traffic, and just absorbing everyone else's stress, your mind is completely in the Iron Age. It's totally degraded.
That microcycle of daily entropy is exactly why the theoretical philosophy has to become a mechanical practice.
Right, because I can see how stepping out of the avatar brings theoretical peace. But that theoretical peace just shatters the second my alarm goes off at 6 a.m. and the real world demands my attention.
Oh, for sure.
So how does this text bridge the gap between a nice philosophy and a frantic Tuesday morning?
Well, it bridges that gap with a rigid, completely uncompromising protocol.
Uncompromising.
Very. The source emphasizes the absolute necessity of early morning meditation. The instruction is to wake up early specifically to sit in loving remembrance of the Supreme.
Okay.
And it uses a really fascinating industrial metaphor to explain why. It asserts that over countless lifetimes, the soul has accumulated impurities and past burdens. It calls this accumulation alloy or rust.
And it gives a pretty stark warning about this rust, doesn't it? It says, without this specific morning practice, the cut, or the rust, simply cannot be cleared. You can't just, wish it away or outthink it.
Correct. The only way to remove it and return the soul to its pure original state is through this highly focused morning remembrance.
I was actually thinking about this requirement for the morning specifically. Because, for most of us, mornings are peak chaos.
Oh, yeah, a total rush.
You're hitting snooze, you're gulping coffee, rushing to get out the door. It made me think of a smartphone software update.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Your phone absolutely refuses to install a major system-level update while you're actively using it to navigate traffic or send texts. It pops up and says, plug this in, leave it alone, and I'll do this at 3 a.m. when you aren't swiping around.
Yes.
Is that what's happening here? Is it isolating the morning as the non-negotiable time for a spiritual update because we just can't be actively running all our other apps?
That analogy hits the nail on the head regarding the timing, but let's dig into the actual mechanism of how that update works, because it's not magic.
Right.
The text talks extensively about Maya.
Maya.
Right, which represents the illusions, the vices, and just the sheer demanding chaos of the physical world. If you wait until you are in the thick of your day to try and connect with your soul, Maya has already interfered. You are trying to install the update while running 50 stressful apps and the system crashes.
So how does sitting in remembrance actually clear the rust? What is happening on a cognitive or, spiritual level?
Think of it like a tuning fork. When you wake up before the world is making demands of you, your mind is relatively quiet.
Okay.
If you use that quiet window to intensely focus your mind on a source of pure, unadulterated peace, the Supreme, your own internal frequency begins to recalibrate.
So it's an energy transfer.
Exactly. Attention is a mechanism of transfer. Where your attention goes, your internal energy aligns. By holding that connection, the accumulated rust, which is really just the habitual, fearful, ego-driven ways we normally react, begins to lose its structural integrity.
Wow.
It just falls away because it can't survive at that higher frequency.
The text points out that true effort makers, those who, in its rather heavy words, have mercy on their own lives, will carve out this time no matter what.
Yeah, it says mercy on your own life because sending yourself out into the chaos of Maya without that morning recalibration is essentially an act of cruelty to yourself.
That's a strong way to put it.
It is, but you are guaranteeing that you will be reactive, stressed, and miserable. The morning remembrance is plugging into the power source when the mind is quietest, clearing the alloy before the world has a chance to dump more rust on you.
Okay, so let's say you do it. You wake up, you plug in, you clear the rust with this tuning fork of peace. What is the tangible result of doing this day after day?
The result is a psychological state that, in today's world, looks almost like a superpower. The ideal state of a practitioner, according to this text, is to be entirely unshakable, immovable, and stable.
Unshakable.
Right. It calls people who achieve this state Mahavirs, which translates to great warriors.
The great warrior of the mind. And to illustrate exactly what a Mahavir is not, the text uses one of the most brilliant botanical metaphors I've ever encountered. It warns the practitioner against being a touch-me-not plant.
It is a phenomenal image. If you aren't familiar, a touch-me-not plant, a charmoody, is a real botanical specimen that literally folds its leaves up and visibly wilts the second you brush against it.
Just collapses.
It collapses at the slightest physical contact to protect itself.
And the text explicitly says, do not become a touch-me-not plant. By not remembering the Father, you will wilt.
Wow.
I love this because the modern touches we experience aren't usually physical.
No, they're not.
We get touched by a passive-aggressive email from a boss. We get touched by a flat tire or a delinquent flight or seeing something enraging on the news. And what do? We instantly fold up.
They really do.
Our posture drops, our motivation vanishes, we snap at our partners, we lose our peace, we just wilt.
Exactly. We undergo a total structural collapse of our mood and our resilience. And this connects directly back to the concept of Maya.
Right.
The text warns that without that morning foundation, Maya will constantly make you waver. Every minor inconvenience feels catastrophic because your sense of self is entirely tied up in the physical avatar's comfort.
So how does the Mahavir mindset prevent that collapse?
Right.
Because, if you are unshakable, the emails and the flat tires still happen. The world doesn't stop touching you.
No, it doesn't stop at all. The difference is the mechanism of absorption. A touch-me-not plant lacks internal rigidity. Its response to friction is collapse. A Mahavir has immense internal structural integrity built every morning.
Ah, I see.
When the passive-aggressive email arrives, the Mahavir doesn't repress their anger or forcefully smile through it. They simply don't experience a catastrophic reaction in the first place.
Because they aren't the avatar.
Exactly, because their identity isn't rooted in the boss's approval, it's rooted in something eternal. They absorb the touch without losing their center of gravity.
This actually brings us to a part of the text that I found genuinely intimidating. Because to maintain that unshakable Mahavir state, you need immense control over your internal landscape.
You do.
And the text provides a radical method for achieving this. It doesn't just suggest, like, taking a few deep breaths. It talks about developing the power to pack up.
Yes. In a section detailing what powerful yoga experiences should look like, it introduces the concept of packing up or merging your thoughts in a single second. The explicit instruction is to apply full brakes, not loose brakes, to your mind.
Full brakes. It says that if you give your mind the command to stop, the thoughts must stop instantly. And if it takes even a few seconds longer for the thoughts to settle, your spiritual power is considered weak. That is an incredibly high bar. It is the ultimate test of cognitive mastery.
But let's look at the mechanics of that. My mind on a normal Tuesday is like a car speeding down a 6-lane highway at 100 miles per hour.
Sure, most people's are.
I am thinking about a deadline, what to make for dinner, an argument I had 3 years ago, and my credit card bill all at once. If I slam on the full brakes in a car going that fast, I don't get peace. I get a catastrophic crash.
Exactly.
The brake pads burn up, the tires screech, the airbags deploy. We see this all the time when people try to forcefully suppress their anxiety. It results in a panic attack or lashing out. How does this text suggest we apply full brakes without causing an internal mental crash?
That friction is exactly why context matters.
Hmm?
If an untrained body-conscious mind tries to violently repress its racing thoughts through sheer willpower, it will crash.
The brake pads are worn out, but what the text is describing here is the culmination of everything we've just discussed.
So you can't jump straight to the brakes without the morning maintenance.
Precisely. By the time a practitioner is applying these full brakes, they aren't a runaway car anymore. They have spent their morning clearing the rust. They have spent their day operating as a soul, not an avatar.
Okay, that makes sense.
Therefore, applying the brakes isn't an act of violent repression. It is an act of trained obedience.
Trained obedience. That makes so much more sense than just trying to force yourself to stop thinking.
Think about a highly trained working dog. When the handler gives the command to stop, the dog doesn't skid out of control in a panic. It simply ceases the behavior and looks to the handler because the bond of obedience is so strong.
Wow.
When you have a powerful, well-worn connection to your spiritual state, the mind obeys the intellect. When you give the command, the soul instantly retreats to what the text calls the silent home, the realm of peace. The brakes work smoothly in 1 second because the entire vehicle has been perfectly maintained.
Okay, so let's zoom out a bit and look at the trajectory we're on. You've shifted your identity to the soul. You endure the friction of waking up early to clear your rust with the tuning fork of peace.
Yes.
You are now an unshakable Mahavir who doesn't wilt when life pokes you. And you have pristine 1 second full brakes on your mind. You are experiencing true peace. What happens next? According to this worldview, do you just retreat to a mountain and enjoy your perfect calm?
Emphatically, no.
Right.
The Merli is intensely focused on the concept of service. It states that the Supreme acts as a messenger, and therefore the practitioners must step up and deliver a very specific message to the rest of the world, and that message is simply return home.
And it frames this urgency with some deeply intense, almost apocalyptic imagery, doesn't it?
It does. It asserts that the current world is quite literally no longer fit to live in. It references a coming destruction of old, divided, degraded systems, comparing it to the epic mythological Mahabharat war. The purpose of this destruction isn't just arbitrary doom, though it is a necessary clearing to establish a single era of truth and peace, returning to the Golden Age.
Because of this impending massive transition, the text frames the act of studying this spiritual knowledge and sharing it as the only way to earn a true income. It basically argues that accumulating physical wealth is completely irrelevant if the physical world's systems are about to transition out of existence.
Right. It completely reorients what constitutes a valuable life.
So how do we interpret this today? Because, our rule on this deep dive is to impartially examine what the source says without endorsing literal end-of-the-world scenarios.
Of course.
Stripping away the literal destruction imagery, how can we interpret this mandate to tell people to go home as a practical modern mission for you, the listener? Why use such extreme imagery?
Extreme imagery is often used in spiritual texts to denote absolute non-negotiable change and incredibly high stakes. If we synthesize the underlying mechanics we've discussed, going home isn't a physical relocation. It is a profound, urgent call to return to one's original state of inner peace and purity.
Back to the silent home of the soul.
Yes. The text suggests that the old world of division, stress, and body consciousness is collapsing under its own weight. And frankly, we see evidence of that in our own modern burnout rates, the epidemic of anxiety, the way our social systems are fraying.
Yeah, you really can see that everywhere.
The current way of operating is unsustainable. So spreading the message isn't about standing on a street corner with a megaphone yelling about the end of days.
Because that would just make you another loud, stressful app running at everyone else's chaotic day.
Exactly. Spreading the message is about embodying that peace so completely, being so unshakable that others look at you in the midst of this chaotic, fraying world and are inspired to find their own internal spiritual home.
Wow.
You don't have to preach. You just have to become the living evidence that peace is possible.
You become the evidence that completely shifts the burden of what it means to serve others. You don't have to fix them. You just have to hold your own frequency.
It is a radical form of leadership through presence.
Let's bring all of this together. We started this deep dive, looking for a way to remain unshakable in a world that profits off our panic. And this text from July 2026 offered a really fascinating, uncompromising roadmap.
It certainly did.
We started with the core shift, the mechanism of zooming out, logging out of the stressed physical avatar, and adopting the perspective of the soul to remove existential dread.
Then we explored the vital mechanics of the morning routine, using the quiet of the early hours as a tuning fork to clear the accumulated rust, setting a baseline frequency before the chaos of Maya can interfere.
We looked at the structural integrity of a Mahavir, warning ourselves not to be that wilting touch-me-not plant every time a modern inconvenience bumps into us.
Right.
We unpacked the friction of the full brakes of the mind, realizing that instant peace is the result of trained obedience, not violent repression. And finally, we understood the ultimate mission, spreading the message of returning to a spiritual home by becoming the living evidence of peace in a transitioning world.
It is a deeply demanding framework, but it connects the most profound cosmic concepts to the very real friction of your daily life.
It really does. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought. It's drawn directly from a very subtle line near the end of the text, in a section offering a blessing to the practitioner.
Oh, I love this line.
The text says something that completely flips our normal understanding of struggle. So it says, if your efforts are right, but you still don't see success, understand that this is not failure, but a means to maturity.
That is just a beautiful reframe of the friction we experience when trying to change.
So I want to challenge you with this. Tomorrow morning, when you inevitably get stressed and you try to apply the full brakes to a chaotic thought, you fail when your mind just keeps racing like that car on the highway. Instead of wilting like that touch-me-not plant and giving up, can you view that exact failure differently? Can you see that moment of failure not as a lack of spiritual power, but as the very friction required to mature your inner strength. Because maybe true unshakability isn't about never having a chaotic thought. Maybe it's about never letting the failure to control it break your peace.